I mentioned in part 1 how important role was, and it really is. The role of a machine is what ultimately makes it exist or not. As such, I went through all the technical issues before ending on role because it was important to highlight all the practical problems before getting to that very make or break argument. But now let's do something else. Looking at 3 versions of mecha, all related but not quite the same, what if we were to reverse engineer the role of the machine from what is shown to us? That is, rather than worry about the pragmatic issues, let's assume for the sake of argument that the technical realism of the internals of the machine here don't matter. Let's just think, what job does this machine do? Now why these 3 in particular? Why wanzers, VTs, and Chromehounds? Well, because I've played all 3, and because they're all games. A game lets you customize, explore, and push strategies. It lets you control. And whereas a show or a book can be really cool, it doesn't really let you do that. The interaction of a game really gives you this, more than an impression. It gives you that feeling of power. That feeling of just innately knowing and kind of directly sensing this is how it is. After all, mecha are entirely fictional, but so many different and diverse ideas of what they are exist. Even in games or shows that approach things more pragmatically, they're kind of all over the place in just what it is they do. These 3 machines seem outwardly aesthetically different, but in terms of what they do, how different are they? So with that set up, let's dig in and try and work out just what the hell these iron giants are. What doctrine do they use? What is their role? Now I mentioned in part 1 just how engaging Steel Battalion was, and it's true. In terms of the raw control, Steel Battalion's massive, controller locks you in, and it really gets you into this very hands-on approach to just all the little integral details of the machine. So after playing it firsthand, just what is a VTs? Well, first off, both this game and my section on Chromehounds will require a lot of others' footage. I'm sorry, I know it's not great, but Steel Battalion is as rare as hell to use, and Chromehounds multiplayer died a good long time ago. Returning to the main point, a VTs, or VT, means vertical tank. But honestly, VTs are fucking horrifying. I mean it. Technical reality aside, if I was any modern military commander, and I saw one of these coming, I would be screaming into a radio for artillery or air support or something. A VT is quite frankly not a vertical tank. It's not even a tank on legs. It's a goddamn Schwer Gustav. The guns on these things start at the cannon sizes of tanks, and those are their basic friggin' automatic machine guns. From there, they only get bigger and bigger. The VT's weapons casually stroll right into 200mm, then 300mm guns, recoilless rifles, even railguns, long-range rockets and mortars, and so on. And that is all beside the fact these things are fucking 18 meters tall, and alright, can side-strafe to dodge incoming fire. These things are nowhere close to tanks. They left behind that mortal scale a long time ago. They're in truth towering, ballistic-wielding metal titans. You would practically need a precision-guided weapon or hefty paveways from an aircraft, or a lot of very ballsy anti-tank missile crews who can reliably hit small gaps in armor to target this thing that can also hit speeds of 100 kilometers per hour, and also shits out bathtub-sized hunks of chaff and flares. So with all that in mind, let's return to the main point. Just what is the role of a VT? What is the VT in regards to mecha at large? In short, it's a horrifyingly monstrous evolution of humanity's previously humbled armored gun-carrying vehicles. It's there to dominate the battlefield and laugh off most attacks with either speed or armor, and you better thank God that at least you could probably hit these things with jet fighters, at least until they make a version with S-300 missile racks and a search radar the size of a house bolted to its head. VTs are not here to play nice or integrate into the contemporary battlefield machine. They are here to step on them and blow car-sized holes in everything else. Now let's jump to the opposite end of the scale. Shrink on down to the super small size, barely a sixth of the VT's height, the wanzers of Front Mission. Front Mission here is a bit of an odd goose, mainly because it's a tactical RPG. You don't really use these things in real time. Rather, you perform setup and then combined attacks play out. You play the game out in what would be in real life 3 to 5 second bursts of combat, in between which you reposition and make the decisions your troops would use. Now, to really show what Front Mission in real time would be like, we could use the intro of Front Mission 4 as an example. We see wanzers deployed along tanks and helicopters, firing and even engaging in a little bit of high-speed skating at one point. But I don't really think that's a good example. It's a nice FMV, but it might be closer to how it plays out in the game for us, whereas what I think is the best example comes from the opening cutscene of Front Mission 4 instead. In it, a special operations force engages in an attack on a base. And oh baby, does this really fit with how I always mentally saw wanzers moving. Not kind of lumbering about, but really engaging in combat. First off, rocket and missile wanzers fire to soften the base up. Then a high-speed dash of units with grenades and explosives go in. They fire their machine guns, take cover, throw demolition charges, and really engage in a dynamic and fast-paced form of combat. Sniper wanzers pick off enemy units and provide oversight and covering fire. Melee units close the gap and deliver brutal, devastating blows to weakened enemies. It's a mobile coordination. Wanzer, I will now tell you, means walking panzer, or simply translating the German word, walking armor. But in truth, the role they play isn't really like a walking tank, or really just a tank at all. It's not like the old concepts of armor. Those vehicles specialized and eventually diversified into tanks, IFVs, SPADs, and so on. Many roles were born from the armored mobile box, and wanzers here have inherited that diversity, but combined it instead with the versatility of infantry. Squads of wanzers in-game use overlapping and complementary attacks through the link system to focus down opposing units and crush them. What we have here is not something that simply dominates the battlefield like VTs did, but rather coordinate altogether weak individual units into killer platoons of specialized fighters. The versatility and adaptability of human squads and infantry has been imbued into these machines to make in fact a true form of mechanized infantry. But wanzers also have a mechanical expression of that, interchangeable parts, with some limitations. A game that takes that versatility to the next level, and that I'm glad I was able to play if only for a little while, many moons ago, was Chromehounds. Made by the same studio that would later be famous for Dark Souls, and more well known in Mecha for Armored Core, Chromehounds was a fascinating experiment, and in some ways it deeply shaped and opened my perceptions of what Mecha was and could be. Here, once again, the opening cutscene helps show the ideal version, the Chromehounds in action, the mecha of the same name. They're not a distinct unit. Rather, they combine a large adaptability of form and weapon and function to kind of come together. It's taking that human element of the wanzers, but it's also clearly on the vehicular scale. They can be bipedal, quadrupedal, tracked, wheeled, or so on. But whereas those inclusions of things like quad legs and Armored Core felt kind of tacked on, here they play a really distinct role, because unlike the two previous examples, Chromehounds has no set role. They have no set models. These machines act as artillery, C2V, snipers, scouts, frontal assault machines, and so on. They're not here to simply dominate, and they're not here to act as an advanced evolution of infantry or tanks either. These mecha instead enact a complete, adaptable combat ecosystem, filling just about every niche of that combined arms picture. Is it as practical as dedicated vehicles? Maybe not. But it is really cool. And it's a different version of just what mecha could be. Instead of trying to fit the mecha into some role that replaces a tank or a jet fighter, the mecha here in Chromehounds instead fulfill basically every role that you could need. You could adapt and change the forms and bodies of those machines to suit the role that you preferred. And I still have fond memories of playing the role of an artillery Chromehounds, firing away in the midst of battle, trying to hit targets on the other side of the map. I hope you enjoyed this little exploration of how even just a few mecha, in detail, do very different jobs. There's a whole lot more I could talk about for each of these things really, and I might just do so one day, or at least I hope so. Until then, next time we'll be talking about some of the real-life attempts at mecha, what they were, and how they dealt with the limitations of physics I mentioned in part 1, along with some helpful new insights I got into those same physics.